Brands Hatch, where the sound and fury of motor racing is in evidence most weekends in the summer, and the best meetings are organised by the British Racing and Sports Car Club. Are races for all classes, including Formula Ford, Formula 3, which is a sort of motorised Scrabble, saloon cars, GTs, Formula 5000, sports cars, Formula 1, and the new Formula 100, especially for Les Leston's benefit. On a typical race day, competitors arrive early. Then it's a question of finding your correct pad, unloading the bits and pieces, and starting the annual rebuild. Bearing in mind the paddock's on a slope, you've got to be a bit careful. You could have your first accident before the meeting starts. And it's on to scrutineering, where Fred Harrison is in command. And it's like trying to get a camel through the eye of a needle to fiddle something past him.
Yeah, I haven't got a spanner just now, but I know if you can do this before you go out and practice, and then we'll check it again, all right?
Yeah, okay, I'll do that.
Otherwise, this is okay.
Right.
And on to the numbers game. Frankie Lee in command. So far, so good. And you're now in with Bert Lamkin. It's a sort of demented traffic cop's job that he has to do, and also be a father confessor.
This is your grid position, old lad, in case you've forgotten it. Where you start from and where you finish entirely up to you. Okay? Jolly good.
So now you know what you're meant to do, and it's off to the track. Looks like a very late entry. And once out the other end of the tunnel, you're in command of another set of marshals. They line you up on the grid, and you're in their hands from now on. This was the Guards' International Formula 3 meeting, and it brought out the top boys in this keenly contested formula, including David Cole, Barry Maskell, Bev Bond, Tony Trimmer, Jean-Pierre Joussard, and many others. Miss Office World was there, but I don't think she was the first prize. With the first heat win for Jerry Birrell and heat 2 to Tony Trimmer, the final promised to be a battle between these two. And when the show started, it was a traffic jam at the first corner. With so much traffic about, the marshals have their hands full, and Ken Corbett on post 9 is kept busy with the blue flag. Tony Trimmer dominates the first part of the race, followed by Birrell, then Hunt, Maskell, Williams, Morgan, and all the rest, with Jurg Dubler working his way through the field. Jerry Birrell is pressing Tony Trimmer, and aided by good flag work on post 4, he takes the lead, which he continues to improve. And eventually he wins by 4 seconds. The victor takes the spoils, and for the less fortunate, it's a case of wrap it up and take it home and hope for better luck next time. One small problem, how do they get the mechanic out of there? Perhaps they unwrap him at the next meeting. Sponsored by the Daily Mail, the Race of the Champions in March opened the European Formula One season. And our cameras now slip back in time to cover this event. A new crop of cars, notably the March 701, with Jackie Stewart in the Ken Tyrrell car, and Chris Amon in the STP Works entry. Jack Brabham was driving the Motor Racing Stable's new Brabham BT33, and Jackie Oliver is with BRM, the P153 now in Yardley colours. Jochen Rindt had last year's Lotus 49C as the new 72 was not ready. And Graham Hill was in a similar car, driving for the Rob Walker team. Jean-Pierre Beltois had the 12-cylinder Matra MS-120. That is, until the last practice session, when he lost it at Clearways. A last-minute fast practice lap put Jackie Stewart in pole position. And making up the front row is Jack Brabham and Jackie Oliver. The flag is raised, and they're away. And the young BRM driver makes a superb start from the outside and leads the field into Paddock Bend. The order is Oliver, followed by Stewart, Brabham, and Graham Hill, making his first appearance at the wheel in England since his crash in America last year. Then Amon, McLaren, and Hulme. Oliver in the BRM was setting a cracking pace and seemed to have the race in hand. Oliver's performance must have pleased Raymond Mays in his Yardley Woolly. Peter Gethin, the reigning Formula 5000 champion, was having his first Formula One drive in the McLaren M7A. And Chris Amon comes in with engine trouble, which was finally resolved on lap 11. Meanwhile, Brabham in top form passes Stewart on lap 9 and takes the lead from Oliver on lap 10. Oliver's race ended on lap 13 with stub axle failure. And Stewart was working hard in the March 701 to keep the leader in sight. But the race seemed set for Brabham in a thinning field. But with 2 laps to go, the ignition goes sick on the Brabham, and Jackie Stewart leads the race. Back in the pits, Ken Tyrrell almost betrays a flicker of excitement. The transistor box on the BT-33 is changed in record time, and Jack Brabham gets back in the race, going like the wind. But time runs out, and the surprised and delighted Jackie Stewart records the first win for a new Formula One car. Brabham was back in cracking form for the season with a new and very promising car, and was robbed of the race by cruel luck, almost at the post. This was to set the pattern of events to come for Jack in a season which was to prove all too tragic for Formula One racing. April the 12th, and the monsoon season starts for the BOAC 1000. The drivers put on a brave face. The fuel arrives, and the pits stock up. The cars and supplies join the circuit. Some of the drivers were quite surprised. It seemed a bit darker when you got outside the tunnel. Chief Observer Bill Webley briefs the observers, while Chief Flag Marshal Monty Tyrrell has a final word with his boys. Chief Marshal Eddie Goodman doesn't seem to get wet. He must have found a dry job. The cars form up on the grid for the noon start, with 2 Ferraris and 1 Porsche in the front row for the 3rd round of the 1970 World Sports Car Championship. Pedro Rodriguez adjusts his visor, and Piers Courage tries to keep dry in the Alpha. And the Atwood Herman Porsche 917 has a top-up. Herbert Muller ponders in the Filippinetti Ferrari 512S. Joe Bonnier hopes for better luck this year in the Lola T70 Mark 3B. Siffert arrives to drive the other John Wyer Porsche 917, and the Martini Porsche team make it a party. The big question is tyres, and the Ferrari team changed their wet ones for wetter. Jackie X tries to demist his screen, and Nick sends them off to try the circuit in the wet. The cars reform on the grid as noon approaches. And Greville Smith drops the flag, and the BOAC 1000 regatta is on. Vic Elford in the white Porsche 917 takes the lead from the outside at paddock, followed by Ix, Siffert, Eamon, Courage, Rodriguez, and the rest. Nobody's quite sure whether the lights are on to see or just as a reminder. Coming off clearways on the first lap, the drivers were fighting to hold their cars on line on the rain-soaked track, and not all were successful. Barry Smith in the Sid Taylor Lola crashes, and the car disintegrates in front of the press box. The driver is unhurt, and the marshals make a quick rescue. This is the moment when good marshalling really tells. It prevents an accident becoming a tragedy. The race is slowed while the debris is cleared, and Nick, the governor, waves the yellow flag. The flying Rodriguez does not see the flag, and he is duly called in and reprimanded. Lap 2, and Ix in the Ferrari passes Elford and leads the race. This causes a certain amount of excitement amongst the Italian camp. But their joy was short-lived, for Ix comes in next lap with wiper motor failure, letting Elford back into the lead. Courage in the Alpha is second, followed by Eamon, then Brabham in the Matra. At Clearways, Courage starts a high-speed reversal down the straight, which ends in the Armco barrier near the start line. The conditions are hardly ideal for cars capable of 200 miles an hour and more. Eamon, now second, chases Elford, followed by Rodriguez, Brabham, and the rest, streaming up to Druitt. But once again, trouble stalks the red cars, and Eamon is delayed with waterlogged electrics and a flat tire. Elford is back in the lead, but now is harried by Rodriguez in the John Wyer Porsche. Elford is passed on lap 15. Rodriguez leads the race. Now, after early tyre trouble, Josephat gets the other JW Porsche into fourth position. Meanwhile, back in the pits, Courage brings in the battered Alpha for inspection. But the Alpha is still a goer, and Courage hands over to Dadamich, who gets the car back into the race. Eamon works through the field to get the Ferrari back among the leaders. The Gulf John Wyer pit brings in the leading Porsche to refuel and change tyres. This Porsche pit shows particularly good pit work. Kinnunen wants to go, but Pedro gets back in. And he's away, still in the lead. And still it rains. Where's my teammate? Says Jack. There he is, Cobber, having a burn up at South Bank. And indeed he was, but no harm was done to the driver. Surprisingly enough, they managed to put a new flint in and went on to continue the race. The Ferrari pit brings in the X Oliver car to refuel and change tyres. X gets out, the fuel goes in. Wheels are checked. But it's not as quick as the JW Porsches were. Oliver refuel. X gets back in, and he's back in the race. Just trimming a marshal. Things look good for John Wyer, but the second car, now driven by Brian Redman, is overdue. And sure enough, Redman appears on foot, having advances, and the marshals, doing a fine job in appalling conditions, are now faced with failing light. The JW Porsche has an unassailable lead, with the Elford Hulme 917 in second place, followed by the Atwood Herman 917. Rodriguez takes the checkered flag and proves his mastery in wet weather driving. A convincing victory for the Gulf John Wyer team, which must have pleased Maestro John Wyer and David York. It was a miserable race for Ferrari, with Eamon best placed at 5th behind the Porsches. The weather conditions slowed the race average and inevitably lengthened the race duration. Whit Sunday, May the 24th, and a beautiful day for the Ford Sport meeting. In fact, there were a lot of beautiful things about that day. But let's concentrate on the main event. This was a 15-lap race for the BEA Trident Trophy. Graham Hill was one of the 3 world champions down to drive 3000 GT Ford Capris, all bog standard, all drawn by lot. Grid positions too were drawn from a Castrol oil drum, so there was a lucky dip in that as well. The front row had Susan Tucker Peake, Piers Courage and Graham Hill. Jackie Stewart was in the third row with John Surtees, and Frank Gardner way back with John Miles and Vic Elford. When the flag falls, Graham Hill very politely hangs back a little to give the others a chance. Somehow or other, they all make paddock first time round. Well, nearly all nearly do it. In fact, the whole of this race was a nearly did it, but nobody quite ever did properly. One of the strange things about this race was how very quiet it was. You could almost hear the language. It takes a bunch of real experts to avoid a real expert that's done something really expert. Kraft led Courage for quite a large portion of the race. But then he lost it at Druids and led Courage into the lead, with Vic Elford trying to get into the boot. It certainly speaks volumes for the motor car that they were all running at the finish. And it was Piers Courage who took the flag. The general opinion was there should be more of that sort of racing. Piers Courage takes the magnificent Trident Trophy. And Stewart is explaining in detail exactly what he did all the way around. And so the victors are taken airborne away. Last visit of the year to Brands is for the final round of the Guards Championship Formula 5000, September the 27th. The tyre camps report brisk business, and the GTs and saloon cars are made ready for the supporting races. Peter Gethin was sure of the Formula 5000 Championship again. This meeting was to decide who would take second place. Ulf Norinder retired from racing and appears to have taken up modelling. The battle for second place in the championship is fought between Howden Ganley and Frank Gardner. Also in the lists, Rainey Weisel in Sid Taylor's McLaren, Graham McRae, Trevor Taylor, and Mike Hailwood, both in Lola T190s. And it looks like a big day as the cars queue up for the car parks at Brands. Barbara Jarman kept busy enrolling new members and dispensing club insignia. And the marshals take up their positions. Jim Garrett on post 3 briefs his team. The race is run in two parts, and Ulf Norinder flags them off to a flying start. Frank Gardner takes the lead, then Walker, Weisel, Taylor, McRae, Howden Ganley, and Mike Hailwood. Lap 2, and Gardner increases his lead, but trouble lies ahead. And Walker passes the slowing Lola, which crawls into the pits with transmission trouble. But Walker's time in the lead is short-lived as well, and he too retires, leaving the lead to Weisel, chased by McRae. Further back, Hailwood and Taylor engage in a nose-to-tail struggle. The pattern seems set for another win for Weisel, with McRae second. Then Howden Ganley, Mike Halewood, and Trevor Taylor, struggling on without a clutch, but remarkably, his lap time is not much reduced. But the results changed in the last few laps. The white McLaren retired with a broken drive shaft, and Graham McRae went on to win. Dennis Southwood, in charge of rescue operations for the BRSCC, has a quiet day. And although we like to see him like this with nothing to do, when the need arises, the boy's on the spot in no time. Here, Brian Martin has a throttle jam open at Paddock in the race for GT cars and charges the bank. The ambulances are not needed, for the driver escapes without a scratch. But that's more than can be said for his beautiful Martin Spider. Dennis and his team set about the task of removing the wreckage before the next race. Although the car may seem to be irreparably damaged, careful rescue at this stage can save many of the components so that Martin can embark on a reasonable rebuild this winter. The only embarrassment for Martin is he was using someone else's engine. And so the bits are drawn carefully away, and we embark on part 2 of the final for the Guards Formula 5000. And Nick in the pace car starts off on lap 1. Into lap 2, their flying lap. Norinder brings the flag down, there's a puff of smoke, and they're away. Into Paddock Bend, Howard Ganley's in the lead, followed by Graham McRae. Up in race control, Bun Crow and his team record every incident almost before it happens. And the light flashes for post number 3. A phone is lifted, a decision taken, and another problem is solved. Meanwhile, back on the circuit, McRae prepares to take Ganley for the lead, and Weisel once again retires. An airborne, Ulf Norinder, flags McRae the winner. And so, as McRae wins and Ulf Norinder retires from the racing scene, we too retire for another year and say farewell to Brands and to the BRSCC film.
Hello and welcome to Brands Hatch and to the Fast Girl Consul Challenge Race, to be held over 10 laps of this twisting Brands Hatch circuit. And today we have many personalities present to watch 17 of the fastest drivers of the weaker sex, and I did say weaker sex, do battle, all in bog standard Ford Consul 3000 GTs. Fastest lap in practice earns Jenny Birrell pole position, with Gillian Fortescue Thomas sharing the front row. And the flag is down and they're away, and into the lead goes Gillian Fortescue Thomas, followed by Jenny Birrell, with Gabriel Koenig a close third. Into Paddock Bend, Rosemary Smith trying to get round on the outside. Round paddock and up to Druid. It's the blue car of Gillian Fortescue Thomas. Then Jenny Birrell, Gabriel Koenig, Rosemary Smith under pressure. And watch for Jenny Dell working hard from the back of the grid. Round Druids and downhill to Bottom Bend. And it's still Gillian, Jenny Birrell, Gabriel Koenig, Rosemary Smith. And if they get any nearer, I'll scream. Round South Bank and lining up for clearways, and it's still the blue car, number 6 in the lead, followed by number 1, then 8, then 14. And the hand that rocks the cradle is playing it rough today. And as they come down the straight to complete the first of 10 laps, it's Gillian Fortescue Thomas in the lead, then Jenny Birrell, Gabriel Koenig, followed by Rosemary Smith, then Mickey Vandervelde, and in 6th place, it's Susan Tucker Peake, then Maggie Blankston. Then just behind is Juliet Scott Gunn, and I think I'll shoot myself if there are any more double-barreled names. But Maggie Blankston gets in the way, and it's a case of you take the high road, and I'll take the low road. Round Druids for the second time, and then Jill Fortescue Thomas well in the lead, then Jenny Birrell, then all the rest into Bottom Bend, heading for South Bank. And these cars are being driven hard enough to put them right out of guarantee. And as they complete the second lap, it's Jill Fortescue Thomas in the lead, then Jenny Birrell, Gabriel Koenig, and all the ladies of the chorus in full song. These cars are perfectly standard models taken from dealers' showrooms and are carefully run in, or they will be by the end of the race. Jill Fortescue Thomas has already run one in during practice. She ran it into the bank at Druids. No, dear, they went that way. It's Mickey Vandervelde coming up alongside Rosemary Smith to challenge for 3rd place. She does it, and she shut the door on Rosemary, and she looks such a nice girl, too. Round Paddock Bend, it's Susan Tucker Peake leading Maggie Blankston, and Yvette Fontaine putting the pressure on after a slow start. Then Gabriel Koenig still in 3rd place. She's falling back a little. And Jenny Dell, now back on the island, takes up the chase. There must be other ways of getting a mink coat. And Yvette Fontaine, the lass from Belgium, heads a gaggle as she sets off after the leaders, and she's now in 5th place, from 9th on the first lap. And over at Druids, it's Jill Robinson. She's just ahead of Jenny Dell. And Jenny's trying to pass her on the inside, but Jill's held her off. She's staying ahead. Keep your trotter down, dear. It's not your car. Coming out of South Bank, Yvette has Maggie Blankston on her tail. And as they enter clearways, into Paddock Bend, goes the leader, Jill Fortescue Thomas, with Jenny Birrell now really having a go. And that's no name to call a lady. And there's Susan Tucker Peake, heading Yvette Fontaine and Maggie Blankston as they scream around Bottom Bend. And Jill Fortescue Thomas shows them all how to do it. And the smell of burning rubber blends well with Chanel number 5. And at South Bank, Yvette Fontaine now leads Susan Tucker Peake, Maggie Blankston making up the threesome. And these three are having a race of their own, with Yvette Fontaine hanging out her tail a little more than the others. Maggie Blankston, she's waiting an opportunity to pass. And still, Jill Fortescue Thomas leads the race, with Jenny Birrell a close second. It's Gabriel Koenig in 3rd place, then Mickey Vandervelde, Rosemary Smith and Yvette Fontaine. And that's Mickey Vandervelde at Bottom Bend with Rosemary Smith, and both are chasing Gabriel Koenig. Susan Tucker Peake, Maggie Blankston, Jenny Dell. Some new boys are finding out how it's done. 1 lap to go. It's still Jill Fortescue Thomas. And this could be a win for Ford. And there's Gabriel Koenig trying very hard. Oh, and she's lost it. Never mind, dear. With such charm, who needs mink? And over the line, to receive the checkered flag, goes Jill Fortescue Thomas to a popular and well-deserved win. Sunday, April the 4th, and 0 hour approaches for what promises to be another wet BOAC 1000 at Brands Hatch. Round 3 in the Manufacturers' Championship Series for Group 5 sports cars and Group 6 prototypes, organised by the BRSCC. We asked Vic Elford how he regarded the race.
All the big cars seem to be having problems at the moment with handling. For the first time, it looks like the 3-litre cars are going to clean up. Certainly they have done so far in practice. So much for the wisdom of the FIA, who decided that as from next year the limit would be cut to 3 litres to make the cars go slower. And they're already going quicker with 3 litres before they're even, before they've even got to be down to that size. As far as everything else goes for the meeting, it's always one of the nicest meetings at Brands Hatch, or at least it would be if the weather were a bit better. The organisation is always superb. There's never any problem about getting in the gate the first morning of practice. The flag marshalling, of course, is probably the best in the world. The general atmosphere of the meeting just couldn't be better.
The battle is joined with the 3-litre Group 6 cars, notably the Ferrari 312 and the Alfa T33-3. And when the flag falls, into the lead goes Jackie Ickx in the Ferrari 312 from pole position. And then Elford in the Martini Porsche, unhappy on the wet track with intermediate tyres and having a big moment at South Bank. Rodriguez passes Stomerlin and sets off after Ickx in the lead, with the rest of the field stringing out. The rain persists, and Rodriguez, at his best in these conditions, delights the large crowd with a superb display. We were not to know at Brands Hatch that we were watching this quiet little Mexican driver for the last time. With many cars not equipped with rain tyres, drivers were having difficulty with some of the tight bends at Brands Hatch. The big Group 5 cars were proving to be a handful on this twisting circuit, and Rodriguez, in the Gulf Porsche, works hard to stay with Ickx in the prototype Ferrari. Porsche into the lead, followed by the 2 Alfas. The Ferrari 312 is rebuilt in the pits, and Ickx rejoins the race 8 laps down and catches up with Rodriguez on the road. And together, these two work their way through the back markers. Damon in the Alfa passes teammate Stomerlin to take 3rd place. And the lights come on to penetrate the rain, and the first pit stop is only moments away. Rodriguez brings in the leading Gulf Porsche 917 to refuel, and the Gulf king-size refueler goes into action. The fuel goes in record time, and Rodriguez takes off. But the pipe remains attached, and pit manager David York has a tense moment. all is well, and Pedro rejoins in second place behind Surtees. Now, Pescarolo comes in to refuel the Alpha. This pit favors the NASCAR churn, and the fuel goes in without a hitch. While co-driver Dadamich has a final word with Pescarolo. Now it's Ferrari's turn, and Ix brings in the 312. Regazzoni takes over. The fuel goes in. And he's away, now in 8th place, in spite of earlier troubles. This race is very demanding to the pit crew, who are glad of a few moments' respite between stops. Jackie Oliver anxiously awaits his turn with the Gulf Porsche from Rodriguez, while team leader John Wyer records that he is overdue. The fuel blockage trouble which has dogged this car, finally retiring it at Dingle Dell. The Muller Ferrari 512 and the Team Uzdau Porsche 908 refueled. Those unsung heroes, the flag marshals, performing a magnificent job in appalling weather, are cheered as the rain eases a little and the track dries out. The Martini Porsche 917, driven by Marco and Van Lennon, is delayed at the pits with brake trouble. Now, the Gulf pit prepares to bring in the leading Porsche 917 to refuel and change tires. The team goes into action with their usual efficiency. But a tight wheel nut delays the car. How's this from a squirt off the pits? Now, Alpha leads the race. Siffert's troubles are not over, for he is further delayed by losing the spare wheel at paddock. And Alphas then make it 1-2, with the Ferrari 312 now up in third place. With the end in sight, the leading Alpha, now being driven by Hazemans, blows up in a big way at Druids. Alpha number 54, now driven by Pescarolo, leads the race with the Ferrari in second place. The fastest car in the race, but unable to catch the leader. And Clem Greville-Smith flags the winning Alpha to score a historic victory for the team from Milan.
"40 laps of Mallory Park, and the drivers in contention, Dave Walker, to go on to drive Formula One for Lotus. Bev Bond shortly to retire, but at the wheel of a car that was to make history coming into Formula 3 at perhaps the most competitive time in the era. The other man to be making an impression here, the late Roger Williamson. And the battle settling down to very much one between Ensign, the new mark in the hands of Bev Bond, the Go-Leaf Team Lotus Formula 3 car, and of course Williamson and Sutcliffe. Mallory Park, never the easiest of circuits to fight out a close battle on. And Walker and Bond soon locked in combat. The twists and turns of the Leicestershire circuit, certainly something that was a challenge to drivers of the day. And Maurice Nunn, who had changed over from driver to constructor in short order, very much the man of the moment as the Puma of Bob Evans pulls off. Evans too is to go on to Formula One honours with Team Lotus. Out front, however, is the Australian Walker, pursued by Bond. In and out of Mallory's teasing S's, nose and tail, and a scant lead for these two over the opposition. But these are the men who count at Mallory Park over 40 laps. Up now towards the Shaw's hairpin, with just yards between them. As always, the final dash down through the Devil's Elbow is a tease for any driver. Too close, and they spin out. The man with the most problems is Walker. So it's a limp over the line for Bev Bond and the Ensign to take victory. The unlucky Australian disengages himself from the car, with Ensign taking a race in the latter part of the season that was to take them and encourage them into Formula 3 success in the future. Part of the course, John Ellison. Good Friday 1971 at Oulton Park, the Rothmans Formula One International Trophy. Noticing here with the 72 entering its second full season and the Pratt & Whitney engine turbine car. John Surtees with the TS9 Surtees and the unloved M14A McLaren. That's Rainer Wiesel, and that's Pedro Rodriguez talking to Ellison before the start. He and Harold Ganley are to drive BRM. Peter Gethin at the wheel of the McLaren, the sole representative there at Oulton on this day. A young Jackie Stewart to drive the Derek Gardner-designed Tyrrell that had made its debut at Oulton the previous year. Checking the tyres prior to the start, and this is the Surtees. Big John still making his way as a constructor. With the exception of BRM, it's the DFV 3-litre Ford unit that powers virtually everything in the field. Out goes Surtees onto a warming-up lap. Ken Tyrrell watches the fuel pumped into the car by a new mechanic, Jackie Stewart. In those days, drivers still did things for themselves, and checking the tyre temperatures. Derek Gardner on the right of your picture, the designer of the Tyrrell. Out onto the track, the final warming-up laps prior to the start. And this is the Lotus turbine, Rainer Wiesel, the Swedish driver who joined the team at the end of 1970 with Fittipaldi. Pedro Rodriguez, perhaps one of the most underrated drivers of all time. Peter Gethin at the wheel of the 14A McLaren. Marshals prior to the start, note the hairstyles. And a comparatively small field. Up from the dummy grid, onto the start line, and of course this prior to light starts, the flag drops, away they go. A tremendous start by Surtees, who comes up and snatches second place, slotting in behind Rodriguez as they go into Old Hall. Rodriguez in the lead, Surtees in second place, the McLaren in third place, and Jackie Stewart in fourth. Out onto the long circuit, and then diving down through Knickerbrook, sliding a little bit, still Rodriguez in the BRM, with quite a lead now on the new second place man, Peter Gethin. The Surtees has fallen back behind Stewart, And the BRM going beautifully as Colin Chapman watches from the pits. All the road used by Rodriguez, and a firm tussle going on for second and third places between Gethin and Stewart. Surtees dropping back with a problem. And still the BRM dominating the situation. Jackie Stewart with the Tyrrell. Watching from the pits, Derek Gardner and Ken Tyrrell, an eye on the watches. No car-to-car radio as Surtees comes in to retire, having blown the engine. A little lappery for the leading BRM and the gap closing between the two, but not significantly, 7 seconds. Spectators in the pits, watching the action out on the circuit. Closing all the time is Jackie Stewart, but the car not as happy on left-hand corners as it is on right-hand corners. Again on their way towards Druids Corner. And still the BRM very much in charge. Rodriguez to go on to win a Grand Prix before losing his life later in the year. Sliding again through Knickerbrook, a very quick corner in those days. A checkered flag and Rodriguez and BRM win. Congratulations to the winning driver. Look out for team manager Tim Parnell about to appear on the left of the picture as the laurels go round the neck of the Mexican. There's Parnell congratulating his driver. Rodriguez's only Formula One win on British soil.